Alright, welcome to Dork News Inc. Today we are going to kit bash up a Legion of the Damned. Now the first thing to remember about kit bashing is not to go overboard and to try to balance your miniatures. So I have a couple pieces here from Atlan Forge and some pieces here that are resized old school Legion of the Damned Marines. And what we're going to do is we're going to combine bits of both so that we get a model that has a lot going on but isn't overwhelmingly detailed. I'll show you what I mean here in just a moment. So now with them together, you can see we have the Atlan Forge bits for the arms and the backpack to go with this Gen 7 style Marine body. That way he has a lot of interesting bits all over his upper body. And we actually did the opposite with the other Marine. Here we have Atlan Forge head, body, and one shoulder pad and the Legion 7 multi-melta and a regular backpack. This helps bring the two to a middle ground so that they look closer as they're both made of swapped parts. So here I have some other Marines that I've done. These two have completely Atlan Forge and my Mark 7 over there has none. And as you see, together they are okay, but they do look a little wonky, with the Mark 7 looking a little out of place. So these two new Marines should help bridge the gap between the two of them, just to give the unit a little more cohesion. We now have them primed black using Vallejo's Airbrush Primer. We put this on with a brush, that's my 10 to go to. I've taken a sponge and put in a little bit of water in it to make it damp but not soaked. And I've got some Eshin Gray, and our first step is going to be a heavy dry brush. Gently push the brush into the damp part of the sponge and then check it against something like your skin or face just to make sure it's not wet. It should only be damp. And then go ahead and put a little bit of paint on the bristles and smoosh it into a paper towel or tissue paper. With dry brushing, this step is crucial to make sure your brush doesn't give you a weird chalky feeling. It should only be a smidge damp. So get just a little bit of paint and then squish it in until most of the paint is gone. And we're going to go over all of the details with this. This will be our first step to laying down a lot of the details that we will be relying on later, so this process can be quick. Repeat for the other model. We want to make sure that we're paying special attention to flames, both the real ones and the armor ones, because they're going to need to get lighter as we go. Now we're going to do the same thing. I'm not even going to clean the brush, and we're going to use dark sea gray from Vallejo, but any light brushing gray will work great for this. It's exactly the same. This time we're going to try and avoid more of the black armor and focus more on the bone and the fire, but we will also allow some of the brightest edges, things that we would normally want to see like elbow joints and hands and knuckles. We'll go ahead and get them with this too so that they have a nice highlight for later when we use a wash to bring it all together. Now we're going to switch over and use Olive Flesh from Monument Hobbies. This time we are only doing the bones and the flames. We're going to do our best not to touch anything else. Alright, now we're going to use Vallejo Ivory and we're just going to paint the bones. We're going to try not to get it into the black, but if you get a little, it's fine. Just get a layer on, make sure your paint's about the consistency of 2% milk, and go slow. Alright, now we're going to start with red. We're going to use Pure Red by Army Paint. The idea here will be to go over all of the red, the fire, and the fire designs. Now, when it comes to the fire designs, I prefer to do red, orange, yellow. When it comes to the actual fire, I prefer to do yellow, orange, red, starting from the base and working my way up, as you see here. If you're using the airbrush paints from Army Painter, which I am, you don't usually need to thin them, but if you are using a thicker paint, make sure you thin them. Try to get inside the lines as best you can, but if you get a little bit outside the lines, don't worry about it. We're going to fix it later with a heavy wash. Now we have the Army Painter Archangel Red. Now, despite the fact it's called red, it's actually orange, and we're going to do about 3/4 of the flame decals, and we're going to do most of the base of the actual fires. So for the actual fires, I don't want it to go above roughly half, and on the decals or the ornaments that are designed as a fire, I want it to go up about 3/4 of the way. Next up is Yellow Orca, and we're only going to paint about the top fourth of the decals and the bottom probably less than a fourth of the actual fire with this. Because it's a monument hobby paint, I did have to thin it down a little, so keep in mind your thickness. You're still looking for that 2% milk, maybe even a little bit less. Alright, now we're going to take our Eshin Gray from earlier, and we're going to go ahead and use it to touch up anywhere where there was a lot of overspill of the previous colors for the fire. This is going to be super important in the decal, anywhere in the shoulder trim that you want to get. Just kind of touch up anywhere that you are going to want to be black that got a little more color than it should have. Again though, you do not have to get perfect into the lines of the decal. We will fix it later. You can also see I'm using the finger smudge technique, which is to put the paint down and around and then rub the paint off with your finger so it's off the higher parts. Alright, so now we're going to use Berserker Bloodshade, and we are going to go over the orange and the red on the decals, and the orange, the red, and the yellow on the actual fire. You know, while you're doing commentary back there, I have a question for you.
Okay.
So, do you think that the drying machine, the dryer, makes quilts? Because I can't think of any other reason why you would leave the lint trap completely filled into that beautiful square of fabric that it makes after you haven't changed it for, I'm guessing, 5 or 6 loads?
You know what? I was attempting to get something new, okay? I needed more blankets. I have a comfort item addiction, okay? You know this.
You know, I can believe that that was the goal. It was very blanket-esque when I pulled it out.
You know, I don't know why you're judging me so harshly.
I just wanted to make sure I didn't want to mess your blanket up.
You know what? And you removing the lint from the lint trap messed up my blankie. How could you?
It was done. Had it been any thicker, it'd have been a fire hazard.
I don't think you love me. I think that's just what this is.
That's it. This is my proclamation that it's not love anymore.
It's not love anymore. You don't want me to have blankies, fluffy blankies that smell nice and feel nice. You just hate me.
I am going to get you a lint square so that you can smell it, because you said that.
I don't want to smell the lint square.
You want it to be a blankie?
It'll be a blankie I use when I'm sick and I can't breathe out of my nose.
Blanket I only use when I can't actually smell it because it smells like lint.
Smells like a fucking mothball.
Smells like a mothball. Why do my laundry smell like mothballs? I find that pretty concerning too, to be frank.
I mean, like, what is the smell of a mothball besides old people?
You know what? I don't know that I can answer that. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I know that they can get rid of snakes. Like, apparently if you're in, like, a really infested area of, like, snakes, apparently if you, like, put mothballs around, apparently the snake will leave you alone. That doesn't work on people, though, if you call them a snake. Apparently it only works on the actual, reptile.
I'm glad you told...
your backstabbing bitch friend, Janie.
I'm glad you told me that before I went out and tried.
You know?
I'd have been out there throwing mothballs at people, and they'd have been like, what are you doing? Removing snakes. With that all behind us, we're going to take Contrast Skeleton Horde, and we're going to do some of the bones. Now, these bones will be a darker, more realistic bone color, but they won't be as bright. So what I've taken to doing is mixing a little bit of this with a little bit of the brighter bone. I like to leave the ribs for the various bits the actual white, while I get most spinal columns and skulls the contrast to use to make them a little less bright. So now we have the sauce that's going to bring all of this together, the Army Painter Dark Tone. This is an Army Painter wash that is thicker and almost like a gel compared to the wash that you would see from like a Games Workshop or a Monument Hobby. For this application specifically, this works like magic. We are going to put it on, and we are going to put it on heavily over just about everything. Now, the things that you want to stay bright, the tips of your fires, the high points of your skulls and your bones, you're going to try to push some of the gel off of that. Because it is a gel, it's easy to kind of move around, and you want to make sure you leave a decent amount of this in between the features of the fire on the armor, and it's going to cover up all of the mistakes that you may have made or little bits of red or orange you may have forgotten about. Now leave it to dry, all the way dry. Give it about an hour. Don't touch it until it's done. This is how you pull a little bit of extra wash in between the fire. So you're going to push the brush into the grooves between it and then pull the paint off of the actual higher color fire, so the red, the orange, and the yellow. Let it pool in between them, and that is how you're going to mask any of the colors that got where they weren't supposed to be. This is the one time that you need to let the paint pool a bit in order for it to do what you want it to do. At this point, you have two options. You can either go back and re-highlight up all the reds so that they're bright and vibrant, kind of like this model, or you can leave them this darker, more muted palette, which I think is a little more realistic, but it is a stylistic choice, and either option will provide you with a good look at the end. Now we move on to one of the final steps. We're going to take the Vallejo Metal Color Dark Aluminum. It's a nice dark silver. It's very flowy, so we need to be careful with it. You don't need much, and we're just going to get all of the silver parts that need to be silver with a touch. Alright, so I decided I'm going to do a muzzle burn for the multi-melta, so I'm going to show you how to do that. The first thing we're going to do is take Darkhaven Nightshade, which is a dark blue wash, and we're going to go over all of the muzzle and then let that dry completely. Alright, so now we're going to do Droopy Violet, and we're only going to do about half of the muzzle towards the front. Now we're going to take a matte black. I'm using Army Painter Matte Black, and we're going to take a brush that is not a dry brush, and we are going to basically do everything we do with dry brushing, and we're going to use it to paint the tips of the actual fire. Not the fire emblems, only the actual fire. Now we're going to take Chrome by Vallejo Air, and we are going to just paint the edge of the muzzle that we did all the coloration to earlier. Now a little bit of the black wash from Monument Hobbies over the silver, and we should be about done. You should also go over any rivets that you've done, any cords that you've done, anything that you did in the silver. Alright, that's it. You're all done. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you'll stick with us for something in the future. Remember to join our Discord, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Thank you so much, and we will catch you next time.